There are only a handful of adventures that come close to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. This series is so dear to me. You know, the books, the movies, the games, the lore, characters, the language, the writing. I can go on and on about it. And considering how the books were first seen on shelves way back in 1954, it definitely is a real testament to how stories last forever. Today we're talking about the 10 best Lord of the Rings video games that have come out in the recent past. I'm going to mention this again. This list is out of a very personal opinion. If you don't see your favorites here, or if you think an entry should have been added higher or lower on the list, remember that everything Tolkien is a masterpiece. As much as we try to rank them, we really won't do any justice to how incredible this series is. Alright then, let's get into it. Number 10, The Lord of the Rings, The Third Age, 2004. The franchise was in full throttle back in 2004 post that the release of the epic conclusion in the film trilogy, The Return of the King. And while this game for PS2, Xbox, and GameCube doesn't quite match up to the sheer quality of the movies, it is still a delightful RPG on its own. The game more or less follows the beat of Peter Jackson's film trilogy, planting the seeds for a thrilling adventure and captivating narrative that should be remembered. The gameplay is appealing as well, providing a linear role-playing experience with turn-based combat similar to many RPGs of that time. Number 9, LEGO The Lord of the Rings, 2012. Okay, so this is kind of a spin-off, I guess. I mean, it does count because, well, it is Lord of the Rings after all. You know, the characters are the same, the story kind of aligns well. It's fine. The only thing about it is that it's a LEGO game, which is fine. There have been a number of franchises that have been given LEGO treatment over the years, and to be honest, this one is really good. It has fantastic elements that give this kid and teen friendly Tolkien property a different edge within the array of other Lord of the Rings games. Traveler's Tales LEGO Lord of the Rings from 2012 is a solid example of a good LEGO game, with a Metacritic score over 80. Though players shouldn't expect cinematic sleekness or realism, guys, it's a LEGO game for crying out loud. This game is a treat for fans of the film trilogy, as it follows several of the major events of the movies. The action-adventure gameplay, while not particularly in-depth, is enjoyable and offers tons of orc slaying fun. Number 8, Guardians of Middle-earth, 2012. So the MOBA format seems like a legit fit for any of the Lord of the Rings games, considering there are literally large-scale battle sequences in its story. Monolith Productions' 2012 effort, Guardians of Middle-earth, was one such game with the MOBA format that did a good job of replicating what it could be like if you were on one of the Middle-earth's battlegrounds, adding some insightful and satisfying battle mechanics with plenty of depth. Once players get a feel of the tricky interface, Guardians of Middle-earth makes for a pleasantly addictive game with a great presentation. There are many who think otherwise. The general acceptance of it is widespread. There are better MOBA options on PC, but this is one of the stronger efforts of the genre you'll find for consoles. Number 7, Lord of the Rings, Two Towers, 2002. The Fellowship of the Ring adaptation was more of a meh title, as fans' expectations were too high because of how incredible the movie was. When the second game based on the sequel arrived the same year of the release of the movie, players didn't really have much rooting for the title. Yet, Stormfront Studios managed to deliver a surprisingly fun and compelling adventure. The game grasps onto the rich narrative in the film, literally integrating dialogue and cutscenes from the movie itself, which kind of a move to play it safe from the developers, but it surely paid off. It doesn't sacrifice on the gameplay front anyway. The hack and slash mechanics usually prove satisfying and fun. Players get to slice through hordes of orcs as Aragorn and his powerful Fellowship companions, and that's exactly why this game did so well. Number 6, Middle-earth, Shadow of War, 2017. One of the more newer titles on this list, the second game in the Middle-earth series aimed to provide a story with a little different than most Lord of the Rings games. This follow-up to the epic action-adventure, Shadow of Mordor, levels up the scope and complexity of the previous game very effectively. While it might have received some stick for being a bit buggy and loot box heavy at first, the overall experience is a positive one. New RPG elements, dynamic conditions, more enemy types, and added multiplayer really pushed this game to a new high with an already robust foundation that was its predecessor. Players can even transfer their top nemesis and most loyal follower from Shadow of Mordor to create a link between the two games. Number 5, The Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth, 2004. When watching battle scenes from the movie franchise of Lord of the Rings, you can't really help but think of how wonderful this would do in an RTS format for games. And while it's not a perfect transition, this EA PC game shines as a worthy adaptation with its large-scale battles, elaborate, appealing, and quite formidable RTS gameplay, with Tolkien's rich worlds and chaotic War of the Ring providing a wonderful foundation. The game offers a captivating strategy format for nearly 30 hours. A good game and a great package for its time. Number 4, The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, 2003. Looks like most of the games with Lord of the Rings in their titles were released right around the movies came out, and if you look into it, that was a trend back then. Off the top of my head, I remember The Matrix and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie franchises both had adaptations from games at the same time right after the release of the super successful movies. It was every Lord of the Rings fan's dream to have a first-hand experience of the Minas Tirith fight or the thrilling charge of the Rohirrim and legitimately have something to do with it. This excellent 2003 action RPG allows players to do exactly that. While it may look a bit underwhelming to today's eyes, the on-screen action and cinematic qualities are impressive for the software that's almost 2 decades old. As far as film to game adaptations go, there aren't many negative things you'll say about this effort by EA Redwood Shores. Players will be able to take on the roles of many of the movie's key characters as they fight through many of the rich, engaging scenes. The multiplayer features add to the fun as well. Number 3, Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth 2, 2006. This sequel shortens the overall experience of its predecessor, but EA refines and fleshes out many of the gameplay elements from the previous game. The result is a deeper, more interesting game overall, and the game actually makes for a solid RTS experience on the Xbox 360 with controls that are in-depth while being fairly easy to manage and get used to in general. Still, the Battle for Middle-earth 2 shines most when played on a keyboard and mouse interface for the PC, which is the ideal setup to have when playing any RTS. With the new ability to craft unlimited structures and the addition of goblins, dwarves, and elves, battles are more epic than ever, and we can safely say that this is one of the best non-movie Lord of the Rings experiences out there. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings Online, 2007. An unusually intuitive approach to the MMO format of games, Lord of the Rings Online was quite an interesting title back in 2007. It was pretty inevitable that Lord of the Rings Online franchise would receive a grand MMO adaptation, and like most other renditions mentioned, this one proves to be a great fit for the series, featuring loads of addictive gameplay that kept players hooked for ages. The game has seen a steady supply of expansion packs over the years since its release, and each of them proving to be an experience worth remembering. A well-structured system of crafting and magic, various quests, and even house decoration helped create a satisfying adventure. With a blend of complexity and fast-paced combat, along with the vastness of Middle-earth to explore, Lord of the Rings Online takes and holds a special place for all of its players. Number 1, Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, 2014. This quite easily is the best Lord of the Rings games out there, and with good reason. When it comes to Lord of the Rings games, rich in presentation and gameplay, Shadows of Mordor takes the top spot and reigns supreme. Its thrilling, enjoyable combat is what stands out the most in this game, while at the same time it doesn't sacrifice much, offering a new slew of moves, combos, and abilities along with countless orc captains to fight, giving a thorough injection of replayability. The creepy, eerie atmosphere takes hold as players venture through Mordor and clash with hordes of orcs. The cinematic qualities and a blend of stealth action and exploration make Shadow of Mordor a truly engaging experience and probably one of the best games ever made, a true masterpiece.